Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the process where we're going to be getting buckets for the December 8th, 2016 NBA slate. My name is Stephen Porter. You can follow me on Twitter at Stephen Porter Jr. Got a pretty wild NBA slate tonight. We got 6 games, tons of injuries, tons of buckets. So let us dive right into it. First game on the slate is going to be the Denver Nuggets traveling to visit my Washington Wizards. Wizards are 5.5 point favorites here. Totals at 218. There's a pretty clear and obvious plays here for the Wizards. Number one being John Wall. We saw what he did in the last game against Orlando, putting up a career high 52 points. He's shooting the ball really well right now. We know he's going to have the ball in his hands, and we know he's going to be attacking the rim pretty relentlessly. Denver has just kind of spiraled into a major dumpster fire on defense right now. Got absolutely shredded by the Nets last night. Wouldn't expect anything different from the Wizards here. I think all 5 of the Wizards starters are in play for cash or tournaments. Marcin Gortat, got to worry about his minutes a little bit. He's been getting pulled from Markieff Morris at the 5 when Kelly Oubre kind of plays the 3. And then that bumps Otto Porter down to the 4. So his minutes are a little bit in question, but I think he's almost a lock for a double-double here. If he's going to play mid-30s minutes, I think 35 to 40, maybe even 45 fantasy points is pretty reasonable expectation for his output tonight. Denver's just been really soft at the rim. They've got a really good rebounding rate, but they've just been giving up so many big games to opposing centers. We saw Brook Lopez get him again last night. He even put up 8 rebounds. A guy that never rebounds grabs 8 boards. I think that bodes pretty well for Gortat's fantasy output tonight. So I really like Gortat cash or tournaments, especially on Draftkings where he's so cheap. Wall, I think with all the value on the slate opening up, I think John Wall is pretty much a lock. You just want to get him in there to have a piece of that floor ceiling combo because it's pretty easy to pay for him. I love Brad Beal tonight. Really nice bounce back spot. We were off him against Orlando, who's a pretty good defense. Denver, obviously, a much different situation here. Price came down to 6.7 on Draftkings. Not concerned about the minutes, not concerned about the individual matchup, not concerned about the usage. I think he's got a pretty nice floor. I think he can give you anywhere from like 33 to 50 Draftkings points tonight. Pretty solid cash or tournament play. Otto Porter, a guy that can kind of probably going to fly under the radar a little bit, especially on DraftKings because his price is I think 6.5K, which is kind of high. But I think he's certainly in play. Cash or tournaments, the minutes are always going to be there. He's locked into like 36 plus minutes in this game, assuming the Wizards don't blow the Nuggets out. The cool thing about the Wizards is that their bench is bad enough to keep any team in the game. So I certainly think Denver is going to keep this game close enough for all the Washington starters to get off. So I think you can kind of pick and choose whoever's going to fit. I think Wall definitely projects to score the most raw points. Like I said, really like Gortat as long as he's going to see the minutes, and I think that's pretty reasonable that he will see at least 30 minutes. So I think he's going to give anywhere from like 30 to 45 DraftKings points. Only needs 34, 35 to pay it off. So that's in the lower range, I think, of his expected outcomes. I think he's a really solid, strong play. Markieff Morris definitely going to be in play. Probably the one that I'm going to fade out of any of them. Just because he's got a little worse floor, but certainly a nice tournament target because I doubt people are going to play him. And if you're really scraping the barrel, I don't think that you have to do this with all the value opening up on the slate, but I think both Kelly Oubre and Marcus Thornton are minimum salary guys that could get you to 18 or 20 DraftKings points. I can't believe that I'm publicly recommending Marcus Thornton at all, but he's played a little bit better on the offensive end here recently, and you can't ask for a better matchup. I'm not going to play him, but I just think that he needs mentioning. Same thing with Oubre. Oubre's minutes are coming up a lot. He's getting to close out games just because he's such a great defender. So I think he is in play for like mid-20s minutes tonight. And I think he can get you like 0.8, maybe 1 DraftKings point per minute in this matchup. So I think he could get you anywhere from like 20 to 25 DraftKings points, which would obviously get it done at minimum salary. Don't think anybody's going to play him. Don't really think he's a cash play because, like I said, there's just so much value out here. But if you need to fill the shooting guard or small forward spots with a minimum salary guy, I think you could do worse than Kelly Oubre Jr. Onto the other side of the ball, Denver is really tough to peg right now. They're just, like I said, they're really bad right now. Mike Malone is like losing his mind. He doesn't. I think their rotations are really up in the air right now. We can't really project anybody's minutes comfortably. Definitely going to be off Moutier. Don't need to target John Wall with Moutier, but I do want to target Nelson, Jameer Nelson, and or Jamal Murray in this spot because we've seen backup guards just get off against the Trey Burke and Marcus Thornton combo for the second unit of the Wizards. Saw Elfrid Payton absolutely give him buckets last time, and Elfrid Payton's not exactly a bucket getter, so I think Nelson and or Murray are interesting, at least for tournaments. Like I said, just probably better floor point per dollar plays on the slate for cash games. But I definitely think there's a little bit of a ceiling here for both of those guys, especially on FanDuel where they're priced a little bit lower. But I think they're both in play for playing like 25 plus minutes and having pretty efficient offensive games. It needs to be said that the Wizards have been pretty bad on defense too, especially the second unit. They're giving up 106.3 points per 100 possessions. So I think this game is going to get up and down. It's going to have great pace, a lot of rebounds, a lot of scoring. I mean, this is pretty much the game to target right now. I think Will Barton's an interesting bounce back candidate. Still played 39 minutes last night. Was horribly inefficient. Turned the ball over a bunch. Didn't make a strong percentage of his shots. Only shot 6 for 15, but the field goals were still there. Shot 9 3-pointers. Only made 1. If he could trend up in efficiency, he could be a really nice bounce back candidate. Still gave you 32.75 DraftKings points. Needs 40 to get there. If he comes in the middle of his range of outcomes, he's probably going to get it done. Don't think I'm going to use him in cash, but I think he's reasonable target in cash for tournaments. His ownership's probably going to go down a little bit, so you might be able to take advantage of that if he's going to come in near the ceiling tonight, which, like I said, I think is certainly possible. My favorite play from the Denver Nuggets tonight is going to be Nikola Jokic. Touched on him last night. Thought he could have a really strong game if he actually was in the lineup. He did play. Used him in a bunch of tournaments at only. I think he was like 1% owned, and he gave us a really strong game. I think he projects to have a really strong game again here. Assuming he's going to come off the bench again, not 100% sure there, but assuming he's going to come off the bench again, he gets to match up with the Wizards' second unit. Wizards are really poor at the rim one way or another. His usage and general involvement in the offense is definitely trending up. I think he's a strong double-double candidate. I think he can give you some defensive statistics. He passes the ball well. Just in this type of game where his price point is, I'm looking to play him in cash games. I think he's a pretty strong candidate for 30-plus DraftKings points, which will pay off the salary. I'm just really interested in him. I think he's a good floor-stealing combo at his price point. I don't know how owned he'll be. People might react to the good game that he saw last night and play him tonight, but that remains to be seen. I think his ownership is still low enough in respect to his ceiling that you can play him in tournament games. Like I said, I'm really trying to get him in cash games here. I think he's a really strong play. Next guy to mention, I'm not going to play Danilo Gallinari. I like the defense at the 3 and 4 spots. Otto Porter has been really good. Same thing with Markieff Morris. Both good individual defenders, so I don't need to be looking at Gallinari or Fareed in this matchup. But Wilson Chandler, we saw him play like 35 plus minutes last night. It's just, like I said, it's really hard to project where the minutes are going to be. Malone's rotations are kind of up in the air, but if he's going to see mid-30s again and have, I think he put up like a 29% usage last night. I mean, I think he's probably their best actual scorer as far as creating their own shots. So I think Wilson Chandler is in play for another big game here tonight. We want to target that Wizards second unit. He'll probably still see matchups with Otto and or Chandler or Markieff, but I don't think that's enough of a deterrent to take me off of him. I'm probably not going to play him in cash games. Like I said, there's just way too much value at the small forward spot tonight to play him there. But really strong tournament target for sure because he's got a nice ceiling at the price. And if you wanted to target him in cash games, I certainly wouldn't talk you off of him. So I really like this game. Want to get John Wall in there. Want to get Beal. Want to get Marcin Gortat in there. Really want to play Nikola Jokic, Jameer Nelson, Jamal Murray, Will Barton, Wilson Chandler, all guys that I think that you can use on tonight's slate. So I really think this is a strong game to target. Let's move on to the next game. We have the Minnesota Timberwolves traveling to face the Toronto Raptors. Raptors are 9-point home favorites. Total here is 214. I think this game is super juicy. The only thing that turns me off of this game a little bit is that Toronto is playing really strong basketball right now on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. I think some of that might be matchup based, but like over the last 5 games, they're posting an insane 26 net rating. So there's definitely concern with them blowing the Timberwolves out in this game. But I do think there is cause for concern with that. I think that Minnesota could score some points here. Um, they've been pretty efficient on the year offensively. They've been horrible defensively, so we know that Toronto's going to get their points. But as long as Minnesota can play well enough to keep this game close, I think there are going to be some ceiling games here from some of these guys. So I definitely want tournament stacks of all the main guys from Toronto and then bringing it back with 1 or 2 guys from Minnesota. Speaking of the main guys from Toronto, we have DeMar Carroll was just announced will play in this game. I think he's a really interesting tournament target, and I wouldn't even be opposed to playing him in cash. I mean, it's a great matchup. He's only 4.2K. We've seen a little bit of a ceiling here. The last time he had a really good matchup, he put up like 40 Draftkings points. I think he could trend towards that again, and I don't think anybody is going to play him tonight, just because, like I said, all the other value plays. So I think he's at least a really strong tournament target and maybe a cash game target if you wanted to go there. I wouldn't try to talk you off of it. He's only seen a 15.1% usage rate on the season, but I mean, he can see enough efficiency to kind of pay it off with that low volume. I'm not too concerned about that. Probably won't be in my cash games, but like I said, I definitely want to get him into some game stacks and tournaments in this game. DeMar DeRozan, his usage has really dropped from he was like 37 to 38 to begin the year. He's closer to about 30% now. I really like the matchup. Definitely want to target him here. I think there's enough value to pay up for him. I think he's a safe cash game target, and I think he could really, kind of touch the ceiling in this matchup if Minnesota would keep it close. So he's probably my favorite target from Toronto in tournaments. Like I definitely would play DeMar DeRozan and DeMar Carroll stack at the shooting guard small forward, and then bring it back on the other side of the ball. So I really like them. I think you can get away with playing either of them in cash. I'm not looking there right now, but I definitely think they're strong targets. Kyle Lowry needs to be mentioned. Like I said, I'm probably going to pay up for John Wall over Lowry in cash, but I like the matchup. Ricky Rubio is kind of meh. I'll target him. I don't love targeting him, but I will target him in the right spot. So I think Lowry could certainly get it done if all goes right in this game. But floor's a little bit too low for me in cash games where I could pay down to one of the really strong value plays or just go up to get John Wall. So I'm not really looking at Lowry in cash, but certainly a tournament target. Patrick Patterson is super frustrating for me. Every time I play him, he does not play well. Played him against the Lakers a couple games ago, and he gave me like 14 fantasy points. But he's only 4K on this slate. I think he's at least a really strong tournament pivot off of Trey Lyles. I think Trey Lyles is going to be pretty popular tonight, and they're like right in the same price point. So I think he's at least a nice tournament pivot off of him, and I could see playing him in cash games. Had a 22.6 usage in the last game, saw 30 minutes. Think he is going to need to play in this matchup with the Minnesota Timberwolves kind of playing big, using Jang, using Karl-Anthony Towns a lot. So I think he could see some minutes. And Jonas Valanciunas bears mentioning he's been awful, so nobody's going to play him. But in this amazing matchup, like if he gets it going early, I think he could pay it off. So I wouldn't be opposed to playing like a DeMar Carroll, Jonas Valanciunas, just really under-owned, maybe they trend towards the ceiling kind of tournament stack in this game and then bringing it back on the other side. But strongest cash targets, I think, are probably DeMar DeRozan, number 1, and then DeMar Carroll, number 2 for Toronto with price included. Bringing it back on the other side, I think this is a great spot to target Andrew Wiggins. I was really more interested in him if DeMar Carroll was going to be out. So that gives me a little pause here. Not sure he's going to be in my cash games because I'm probably going to pay down, but I think he's an awesome tournament target. Only 6.4K on DraftKings. He's got a really bad game log. I don't think people are going to play him here. But he's always carrying a really nice ceiling. and I think he could see 38 to 40 minutes. I think he could see a really high shot volume. He's only 20% usage in his last game. He was up closer to 30% usage for most of the season. So, I mean, I think he could trend back up towards 30. So if he sees that increased volume, we know the minutes are going to be there in a tight matchup. And if he's going to see some efficiency, which is a little concerning with DeMar, like I said, but I still think he could get over in that matchup with him. I think he's an awesome tournament target. I don't think many people are going to play him. And just as a quick note, I mean, just with the way the slate is kind of shaking out here, it looks like it's going to be everybody's going to be paying up for the studs and then using really low price values. So I think a really nice contrarian way to go about tournaments is to play all these mid-range guys that have high ceilings and see if maybe you can get a bunch of ceiling games at low ownership. And if the studs and duds kind of lineup construction would fail, you have major leverage in tournaments. So Wiggins is definitely a guy I'm looking to in tournaments. Karl-Anthony Towns is really, really interesting on the slate, especially with the fact that Marc Gasol is now questionable. Towns is probably the second, as if you're on FanDuel, Towns is probably the number one raw points projection, especially with Marc Gasol being questionable. So really like Karl-Anthony Towns this matchup. Not worried about targeting Toronto at the rim. They're pretty soft on the boards, 49.9% rebounding rate. Minnesota's a little higher, 50.6, and we know that the main rebounding candidate for the Minnesota Timberwolves is going to be Karl-Anthony Towns, and if he's going to have his hands on a couple offensive boards, that sets him up for a couple extra shot opportunities. So I'm really interested in him. I think he's a cash game play. There's definitely enough value to play him. I'm looking more at Anthony Davis probably, but I wouldn't hesitate to play them both. Like I said, there's just so much value, and if Marc Gasol is not going to play, he's probably the number one center target. Raw points expected on FanDuel. Definitely think Zach LaVine and Gorgui Dieng are interesting in this matchup. Not worried about Zach LaVine's individual matchup at all. We know he's going to play a bunch of minutes. I always touch on the fact that I think he's just a really good basketball player, really good shooter, obviously really good off the bounce attacking the rim. Saw the actual highest usage rate in the last game for the Minnesota Timberwolves against the Spurs. He got up to 25% usage. I think that was probably more of a schematic thing with the Spurs not wanting to let Wiggins or Karl-Anthony Towns get off, and then usage kind of trending towards LaVine. I'm not sure that'll happen in this game. Don't think he's a cash game target, always a tournament target, but I think there's probably stronger shooting guard plays tonight. So I probably won't have a lot of them, but definitely worth a sprinkle in tournaments. Gorgui Dieng's pretty interesting in this game. I think he projects to probably have a double-double. Like I said, I think he can get over in this matchup as well on the board. I think 30-plus DraftKings points is a pretty reasonable expectation. Nobody's going to play him in this spot. He could get Judd up to like 40 DraftKings points at a really low ownership. So I think he's somebody you can go to again. Probably not going to have a whole lot of LaVine and Dieng. I want mainly Wiggins and Karl-Anthony Towns in this matchup. So love tournament stacks of like Andrew Wiggins and Karl-Anthony Towns, and then bringing it back with any of first and foremost DeMar DeRozan, DeMar Carroll. But I mean, I could play Lowry, I could play Patrick Patterson, I could play Jonas Valanciunas in this matchup. I also think Corey Joseph is a very reasonable target in this matchup. People are not going to be on him at all. He should have like 1% ownership or lower because there's so many value guards. But I think he could give you 30-plus DraftKings points, especially if this turns into a blowout. So let's move on to the next game. We've got the Golden State Warriors on the road to visit the Utah Jazz. Totals 208. Warriors are 10.5-point road favorites. Problem with this is that it's a 9 o'clock tip, and there's just so many moving pieces. Hard to project this game. I think there should be points scored. Utah is actually a really efficient offensive team. Obviously, we got to tick them down a little bit because nobody's playing for them. Gordon Hayward's been ruled out in this game. Rodney Hood is out. Derek Favors is out. So all their best players are out, which really sucks because I thought this was going to be I was kind of looking to this forward to this matchup from the start of the year. I thought this was going to be a really, really interesting game because I think Utah matches up well with Golden State, and I think they're probably the biggest threat in the Western Conference to Golden State in the playoffs, but just with all the injuries, they have no shot in this game. If the Golden State Warriors don't rest anybody, they've only ruled out Shaun Livingston so far. If they don't rest anybody, I'm a little bit off of the Utah guys just because I think that Golden State's playing such great defense right now. I don't know that they'll be able to find offensive efficiency in this matchup. But if Golden State rests a couple or like all of their key guys in this matchup, I'm really, really interested in this game. I want everybody that's going to play in this game. There's going to be a ton of value because both offenses, I think, could find offensive efficiency because it's like backups against backups. I think both of these teams have really solid depth. Um, Let's start with the Utah Jazz side. Like I mentioned, everybody's out for the Jazz, so their main contributors on offense. I'm not going to play Rudy Gobert. I just think there's too much of a floor. I don't know what to expect from him on the offensive side of the ball. But like I've touched on before, I never get Rudy Gobert right. So I mean, you could play him here, but I'll go up or down at center tonight from him. I'm just not going to play him at all. Um, Really interested in Joe Ingles. Joe Ingles is like my number one target. Price considered. I think he projects to play like 30 minutes in this game. He handles the ball a lot. He can pass the ball. He rebounds a little bit. He can shoot the three. I just think he's an efficient offensive player. Don't like the matchup if it's going to be, against Draymond and Kevin Durant and all those guys. If those guys would sit, I really, really like Joe Ingles tonight to kind of trend towards like 30 to 35 DraftKings points, but I still think he can get you 20 in this matchup. So I really like him. He's in my cash games right now. Like I said, he's the kind of cheap small forward that I want to target. I did want to target Andre Iguodala in this game, but I think as a kind of an older guy, they've already rolled out Livingston. I think he's definitely a candidate to sit on the back-to-back here, so I'm kind of hands off him. I could see him having a good game if he plays, but just with the uncertainty and rosters locking at 7 o'clock, I don't need to be messing around with him. I'll just play somebody else, DeMar Carroll or Joe Ingles are my two main kind of cheap small forwards that I'll play over him. So that's unfortunate that we don't get to kind of dip our hands into State offensive goodness tonight. But so I like Joe Ingles. I like Joe Johnson. Joe Johnson's also a little bit concerning to me. Just don't know what's going to happen with the minutes and shot attempts. But if I had to guess, I think Joe Johnson should see like 25 plus minutes, should see like a 25 plus % usage rate. Definitely think he's a cash and or tournament target. I'm probably not going to go there on DraftKings because it's not shaking out that way. But on FanDuel, I think it's a pretty reasonable play to just play Joe Ingles and Joe Johnson at stone minimum and move on from there. I think they're really strong plays over there, and I could definitely see him paying off that $4,400 price tag. He is shooting guard and small forward eligible. So I think he's giving you a floor of like 20 to maybe even like 23, 25 DraftKings points. Probably giving you a ceiling up to about 40 in this game if he plays like 30 plus minutes and he gets a really nice matchup like if Golden State would sit there. Guys, I'm really, really interested in Joe Johnson. I think Joe Johnson's a must play if we get news that Golden State is going to sit all their main cogs. But again, it's hard to tell right now. So I will at least have tournament ownership of Joe Johnson, and I think he is a very strong cash play. I think he's a reasonable cash play, even if Golden State plays the guys, but I think he's a really strong cash play if they don't. Also interested in Dante Exum here. I'm not really looking too hard at the kind of usage rates of Utah's guys with all these other guys off the court. I mean, I think there could just be a totally, totally different game plan here in this game. But Dante Exum is stone minimum. Definitely a guy I think that you can look to. I think he projects to play like at least 30 minutes in this game. He can play the 1. They've played him at the 2 a little bit. They haven't done it recently, but I mean, they're so starved for bodies right now. I think he can get some minutes at the 2. So I think he's going to play at least 30 minutes in this game. I think 18 plus DraftKings points is very, very reasonable for his expectation. I think he can get you up to 30 if everything goes well. So definitely a strong cash play. The only issue that I have playing him in cash is that there are so many strong value plays. There's a little bit of opportunity cost, I think, with using him. But if he works into your rosters, I mean, go for it. I think I'd probably be okay with playing him. I might not play him in tournaments just because I'm not sure if he gets you to 30 DraftKings points. I mean, I could see it happening, but his ownership might be a little too high for me. I might just go elsewhere. But I think he's reasonable target cash and or tournaments tonight. Just because of how much is open on the Utah side of the ball. Same kind of thing with him. If everybody would sit from Golden State, I think he projects to see much more efficiency, and the minutes should still be the same. So he'll be a stronger target for me if Golden State is going to kind of punt this game. Like like I said, not interested in Rudy Gobert. Not really interested in Boris Diaw either. Kind of an older guy. Doesn't even project to play. Wouldn't project to play well in any circumstance against Golden State. So not interested in him at all. Trey Lyles, very interesting target. I think he's a good project. I think he projects to play 30 plus minutes in this game as well. Can play a little bit of the 4, might even slide down to the 5 in this matchup. Not sure what we're going to see from Golden State as far as the rotations go, but if he's going to see 25 to 30 minutes, I think it's reasonable to expect him to kind of get up close to 1 DraftKings point per minute. Yeah, this is a guy we know that can attack the basket, shoots the 3 a little bit. Don't love him as a rebounder, especially if Golden State plays all their guys. But if they don't, I think he could get onto the boards a little bit. I think he's a reasonable expectation of like 20 plus DraftKings points. I think he's a pretty nice ceiling play too in this matchup if the Golden State guys are out, because I think he can get you to like 35, maybe even plus that if he plays 30 minutes, because his usage should be like 22, 23 plus in this matchup because there's just so much open for the Utah guys. So Trey Lyles, pretty strong tournament target. Wouldn't hesitate to play him in cash. He's not on my cash rosters right now, but I think he's in play. And then last guy I want to mention from Utah is going to be Shelvin Mack. I think Shelvin Mack's actually one of the strongest targets from Utah. I think he projects to probably handle the ball the most in this matchup. I think he's going to play. I think he's kind of locked into 30 plus. I think he could trend up to like 36, maybe even a little bit more minutes in this game. I think he's almost of a floor, like 25 DraftKings points, which is going to be value on DraftKings. So I think he's got a really nice floor ceiling projection in this matchup. Same thing if Golden State doesn't play their guys. I mean, I think this is a guy that you must play in your cash games tonight. Really, really like him at 4.1K. I think I like him anyway. Like I said, I think he's going to give you like 22 to 25 points at least. I think he's giving you like a 40-point ceiling with all the usage and minutes opening up. So I really like Shelvin Mack. So probably my strongest targets are Ingles, Mack, Joe Johnson. I think I like Joe Johnson more if the Golden State guys don't play, because I think he would kind of be the target of the most defensive attention, and I wouldn't like the matchup because Golden State's playing such great defense right now. But if the defense would get a little softer with the guys out, love Joe Johnson. So my Mack, Ingles, Joe Johnson, Trey Lyles, and then Dante Exum, probably all in that order. Tough to tell what we're going to see here from Golden State. I'm pretty much going to be hands off. I doubt we'll get news before a lock. I'm not really interested in any of these guys. I mean, I really wanted to play them in this matchup, but it's just not going to happen for me. I'll go elsewhere for more certainty. Even if they do play, I mean, like, who knows if they see any more than 20 or 30 minutes. And I mean, they could get you there with crazy efficiency in this matchup, but it's just there's too much uncertainty. I'm really interested in playing JaVale McGee. I think you can just totally punt with JaVale. I think JaVale kind of would match up well to like start this game. So maybe they sit Zaza as an older guy and play JaVale. JaVale's been a crazy efficient guy. I mean, we know he has a ton of raw talent. He's just always been such a bonehead that he can't translate it to actual production on the court. But I've liked what I've seen from him so far this year. I think the Golden State kind of culture is good for him. So I'm not opposed to just taking a off the wall kind of punt play with JaVale. I think he's giving you like maybe he plays 18 to 20 minutes in this game if all the guys sit, and I think he could give you like 25, maybe 30 DraftKings points, and he's stone minimum. I don't think he's going to be owned at all, so I think that's a really, really interesting tournament punt. I mean, I would definitely wouldn't go there in cash, obviously, but another thing I want to mention too is the late slates are awesome. The small 2 or 3 game slates are really awesome to play on nights like this, where there's a whole lot of uncertainty with the later games, because if you're paying attention and you can get the proper pivots off of whoever would be ruled out or into your lineups, there's a ton of profit potential. Remember, there was a game earlier in the year where there was some uncertainty with Dallas guys, and then Dallas ended up sitting all their guys, and I remember like JJ Barea sat out, and he was like 30% owned on the late slates and cash games. So there's a huge profit potential if you are paying attention for those late slates. So that's something I would definitely recommend to keep an eye on tonight, especially with this game having so much uncertainty. I don't really see anything else with Golden State. I think if all their guys sit, I'm interested in like I said, JaVale. I think Patrick McCaw is really, really interesting. Ian Clark, really, really interesting. I think Ian Clark is a reasonable punt in tournaments either way, because I think he could see like 20 minutes even if the Golden State starters do play, because if they do play, I don't expect them to see a ton of minutes because they should absolutely steamroll the Utah guys in this matchup. So just a whole lot of uncertainty here. I think I covered pretty much every pivot for what we get as far as news, so I'm going to move on to the next game. Manuel Mudiay was just ruled out of tonight's game. Bump up Nelson, bump up Murray. Nelson is probably going to start. I would assume Nelson is going to start in this matchup. That actually bumps him down a little bit for me. I don't want to target John Wall with him, even though we've seen Wall give up some pretty big games to opposing point guards, so he's still in play. But that kind of ticks Jamal Murray up a little bit for me. I think Jamal Murray's a really strong tournament target here. But next game on the slate is the Philadelphia 76ers on the road to visit the New Orleans Pelicans. Total's 206. Pelicans are 8-point favorites. There's a little bit of uncertainty here as well. Drew Holiday is questionable for this game. I don't think there's a whole lot of motivation to play Drew Holiday in this matchup. I think the Pelicans can win this game even without Drew Holiday, so I'm hoping Drew Holiday doesn't play. If Drew Holiday does not play, locked and loaded in your cash game rosters should be Anthony Davis and Langston Galloway. I actually think they're probably locked and loaded one way or another in this matchup. I think New Orleans kind of projects to steamroll Philly here. Philly just hasn't been that good. I know Joel Embiid's going to play, but I kind of don't like Joel Embiid in this matchup. I would assume that Anthony Davis matches up with him. And Anthony Davis is one of like maybe two guys in the entire NBA that I think can actually slow down Joel Embiid a little bit. I'm pretty much off of Embiid. Totally. I wouldn't play him in cash games here. And it's hard for me to say because of how much I love Joel Embiid. But I don't think he's the best play points per dollar wise. I'm going to go elsewhere. It's certainly a tournament play, but I probably won't have him. I'll go up or down at the center position. And Robert Covington is back for Philly. People are probably going to be on Ilyasova, and I think it's within his range of outcomes to kind of get you there into the mid-30s again. But I'm probably just not going to play him. I'm going to let other people play him and kind of hope he bottoms out a little bit in this matchup with all of the Philly front court guys coming back to play in this game. So I don't think he projects real well. I'm going to fade. I don't want anybody from Philly. I'm not playing any of them. Too much value elsewhere. So I'll full fade. I'll let him beat me if you want to use him against me. That's fine. And you win. If you win, you can have it. I think Anthony Davis, like, just jam him in to your cash games. I don't think you should be playing cash games without Anthony Davis in there. I think he's giving you like a 60-point floor. We've seen him literally score 100 points, and you can't ask for a more efficient target here against Philly. So I think he's giving you a legitimate range of 60 to 100 Draftkings points here, and there's just so much value that you play him. Play him in cash games. I could see fading him a little bit in tournaments, but I'm still going to be overweight on the field. I want to play Anthony Davis a lot tonight. Again, Langston, I'm looking at like 100% Langston Galloway exposure. If Drew Holiday is out, I could see fading him a little bit for some of the other value plays on the slate, but if Holiday's out, I'm all in on Langston Galloway. Saw 27.5% usage in the last game. Would expect him to be at least low 20s, maybe up to mid to upper 20s again in this game. Play 25 plus minutes at least. Think he's a lock for like 25 plus if Drew doesn't play, and that's you got to have him. Not really interested with so much other value on the slate. I'm not really interested in any of the fringe guys. I could see Tim Frazier having a nice game, but he's too expensive. I could see Terrence Jones having a nice game. Same thing, too expensive for me. Solomon Hill projects to play a ton of minutes, but again, there's just better small forward value, so I'm not going to play him. Next game on the slate is going to be the Portland Trailblazers, 3.5-point road favorites on the road facing the Memphis Grizzlies. Total's 205 here. I really wanted to play Marc Gasol coming into today. Love targeting Memphis with big guys. If he plays, I probably just can't play him in cash with the groin the groin concern right now. I don't want to play guys with muscular injuries coming into the game. I don't need to expose myself to that kind of floor in cash games. But he's definitely a really good tournament target because it's an awesome matchup. We talked every time Portland plays that they are one of the most, probably top 5 most fantasy friendly teams in the NBA. They give up a ton of points, 110 points per 100 possessions on the season. They play at a fast pace. They get buckets, so they kind of they'll get you moving up and down the court a little bit, and they will give you certainly pretty easy looks at the rim. Not too scared about Mason Plumlee guarding Gasol. So if he plays, I like him. If he doesn't play, don't know who to tick up. Zach Randolph is probably going to be the guy that we go to. He's coming back off of multi-game absence, but like I said, it wasn't injury related. I think if Gasol doesn't play, he probably projects to play like 25 to 28 minutes at least. Probably projects to have like 30 plus usage. I like him to have efficiency in this matchup. I think he's giving you a pretty nice little floor ceiling combo at 5.3K. So if Gasol doesn't play, I'm pretty into him. I think JaMychal Green could take another bump if Gasol doesn't play, but I'd probably just play Zach Randolph for cheaper. But definitely an interesting target JaMychal Green would be. I don't know who would start. I don't think they would start Randolph. I think they'd probably start like Deontay Davis if Gasol doesn't play, but I'm not really interested in Deontay Davis even if he starts. I think there's better value plays out there. So like it's JaMychal and Randolph in the front court for me. I think Gasol being out could maybe open up a couple extra shots for Troy Daniels. He's a little too expensive for me. Probably not going to play him. But I think he's at least interesting if Gasol's out. And other than that, there's probably going to be value for Memphis' side of the ball here, but I just don't feel comfortable projecting it, and we probably won't find out who's actually playing until lineups lock, so I'm not going to go there. Portland side of the ball, if Gasol doesn't play, I'm really worried about a blowout here. I think Portland could really, really run away with this. They're playing pretty well on the offensive side of the ball, and they might be able to play better defense without Gasol. Gasol is such a huge part of the Memphis attack. I wouldn't really expect them to have, high offensive efficiency even against a bad defense. So I would like Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum for sure. Definitely think they're tournament targets, especially in a game stack if Marc Gasol would play. But I'm probably going to go elsewhere. I'm probably just going up to Wall just to get the certainty in this kind of matchup. But I could see playing Damian and or CJ in cash, especially if Marc Gasol comes back and plays in this matchup. They both have really attractive price points, like 6.6K is. DraftKings is just begging you to play CJ McCollum. I think he's an awesome target for what I had kind of touched on earlier for just a tournament lineup with mid-price guys that have nice ceilings. I think McCollum fits into that really well. Damian Lillard, I think, is actually an awesome cash play on FanDuel where you can just pair him with John Wall and kind of lock yourself into like 90 plus fantasy points in the most likely scenario there, and then just really, really hit on value on other positions. Mo Harkless is questionable for this game. Not sure who would really see the biggest bump if Mo Harkless doesn't play. And I'm actually really interested in Mason Plumlee. They dropped Mason Plumlee's salary all the way down to 5.2. Portland's not a great rebounding team, but neither is Memphis, especially if Marc Gasol doesn't play. I really think that Mason Plumlee can give you a double-double. I think he can give you a bunch of assists. I think he can give you a bunch of defensive statistics. I think he's a legitimate cash play. And another guy that would work really well with kind of mid-tier guys that give you like a 40-point ceiling. I love the matchup. Like I said, Portland's going to score. He's going to be involved. I think he could really, really get over in this matchup. I like him a lot. Wouldn't talk you off of playing him in cash games. And I think he's a strong tournament target. I doubt people will be on him today. And the price point is just really nice. So really interested in him. I'm kind of off all the bench guys. So for me, in Portland side, it's going to be CJ McCollum, Damian Lillard, and Mason Plumlee for sure. I think they're all reasonable cash targets. I think they're all reasonable game stack targets if you can bring it back with a couple guys from Memphis' side. Memphis, you got to watch for Marc Gasol if he plays. I like him, but more as a tournament target because I don't like the floor with the groin uncertainty. If he doesn't play, I really like Zach Randolph, like JaMychal Green. I think you could go to Troy Daniels. I probably won't do it. I don't really like any of the point guards here. I don't want to play Tony Allen. I don't play Tony Allen. I could see playing him, but just not a guy I play. He is not part of the Get Buckets family. So not gonna look to him. Next game to take a look at on the slate is going to be the last one here. It's going to be San Antonio Spurs, 3.5 point road favorites at Chicago Bulls. Totals 202. I'm pretty sure Tony Parker's out in this game. Let me confirm that. If Tony Parker's out, I want to play Patty Mills again. And I really don't think that this game is one to target. There's just too much other value on the slate. I don't see Tony Parker having been ruled out officially, but I'm assuming he's not going to play. If Tony Parker's ruled out, I'm really interested in Patty Mills. I think Patty Mills is a strong cash and/or tournament play. His price came up a little bit, but really love the matchup. Love point guards against Chicago because they get to match up with Rajon Rondo a lot. Rondo's just terrible on defense. Rondo's terrible overall. Just really shouldn't even be in the league right now. He kind of doesn't fit the way that the league goes. And from a character standpoint, I just don't really think he makes sense on an NBA roster right now. I don't know what they're doing. They should probably just cut him and let Jerry and Grant play, but that's not really relevant to the fantasy slate tonight. So Patty Mills, the guy I'm looking to play. Not really interested in anybody else. I mean, Kawhi Leonard's cheap, but I don't need to target Jimmy Butler. Kind of the same thing with Jimmy Butler. He's really cheap in this matchup, but I don't need to target Kawhi Leonard. I just don't see a whole lot of buckets being scored in this game. Too much defense for my liking for fantasy purposes. The guy I would be interested in Chicago's side is going to be Robin Lopez. I think he could dominate on the boards. Kind of talked about how I think Pau Gasol is a little washed, and they are giving you a really nice savings here with Robin Lopez. He's only 4.5K, so if he double doubles, he's pretty much getting there for you. I think he's a strong candidate for a double double tonight. I think he could play 36 minutes in this matchup. Really like Robin Lopez. Pretty much only targets I'm looking for in this matchup at all are Robin Lopez and Patty Mills, and I could even see playing both of them in cash. I like them that much, but they're definitely lower owned tournament targets with a little bit of ceiling I think you can go to. So that will do it for the slate. Thank you guys for tuning in. I moved my broadcast site to the library today because I am just so frustrated with the lack of internet reliability that I've been getting, and I totally understand how frustrating it is to watch a choppy broadcast. Watching a lot of them myself, so I want to apologize for that and thank anybody who has kind of stayed with my videos despite the poor internet. Hopefully we've got it figured out here tonight, and I hope you guys all have great success in your games tonight. Thank you again for tuning in, and good luck.